When billionaire Ezra Callahan checks into the Evermont Hotel with no luggage and haunted eyes, night clerk Marissa Cole doesn't expect her quiet shift to change everything. Who is he running from? And why can't she look away? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The night shift at the Evermont Hotel was quiet, just the way Marissa Cole liked it. At 37, she had learned to appreciate the silence after days filled with the chaos of juggling bills, her son's school activities, and the constant worry about making ends meet. The grand lobby, with its faded elegance, gave her a place to breathe while everyone else slept. Tonight, rain tapped against the tall windows, creating a soothing rhythm as Marissa organized the guest folders for the next day's check-ins. The old hotel had seen better days, but it still maintained a certain charm with its polished wooden reception desk and crystal chandelier hanging in the center of the lobby. The clock on the wall showed 11:45 p.m. when the front doors swung open, bringing in a gust of cold wind and rain. Marissa looked up, surprised to see anyone arriving this late. A man stood in the doorway, his expensive suit drenched, his dark hair plastered to his forehead. Even with the disheveled appearance, something about him commanded attention. He walked to the reception desk with slow, heavy steps, like a man carrying an invisible weight. "Good evening," Marissa said, putting on her professional smile. "Welcome to the Evermont Hotel." The man didn't return her smile. His eyes, a deep shade of blue, seemed distant and troubled. "I need a room," he said simply, his voice rough as if unused to speaking. "Of course, sir. Do you have a reservation?" He shook his head. Water dripped from his coat onto the polished floor. "That's not a problem. We have several rooms available." Marissa turned to her computer. "How long will you be staying with us?" "I don't know." He pulled out a credit card and placed it on the counter. "A week, maybe longer." Marissa glanced at the name on the card and felt her heart skip a beat. Ezra Callahan. The name was familiar. Too familiar. His face had been on business magazines and news shows for years. Ezra Callahan of Callahan Ventures, the billionaire who had built an empire from nothing. But the man standing before her looked nothing like those polished photos. This man was a shadow, hollowed out and haunted. She processed his information without mentioning that she recognized him. Everyone deserved their privacy, especially when they looked like they were running from something. "Would you prefer a room? So with a view of the garden or the city, Mr. Callahan?" He seemed surprised by the question, as if such preferences were meaningless. "Whichever has fewer windows," he said. Marissa nodded, choosing not to comment on the unusual request. "Room 312 might suit you then. It's at the end of the hall, very quiet, with just one window overlooking the courtyard." "That's fine." He didn't ask about amenities or checkout times. As she handed him the key, their fingers brushed briefly. His were ice cold. "The elevator is just around the corner," she said. "Breakfast is served from 6 to 10 a.m. in the dining room, and room service is available until midnight." He nodded absently, taking the key. "Thank you." His eyes flickered to her name tag. "Marissa." The way he said her name, like he was testing how it felt on his tongue, made her cheeks warm unexpectedly. "Is there anything else you need, Mr. Callahan? Luggage to bring up?" He looked down at his empty hands as if just realizing he had arrived with nothing. "No, nothing." With that, he turned and walked toward the elevator, leaving a trail of water droplets on the marble floor. Marissa watched him go, wondering what could drive a man like Ezra Callahan to check into a modest hotel like the Evermont, with no luggage and no plan. The business world was brutal. She knew that much from the news, but something in his eyes spoke of a different kind of loss, something personal and raw. Not that it was any of her business. Her job was to check guests in, not pry into their lives. Still, as she wiped up the water from the floor, she couldn't help but wonder what story lay behind those troubled eyes. The next morning, Marissa hurried through her small apartment, helping her 10-year-old son get ready for school. "Mom, have you seen my science project?" Lucas asked, his dark hair sticking up in all directions despite her attempts to smooth it down. "Check under your bed," Marissa said, packing his lunch. "That's where you left it last night." Lucas disappeared into his room and returned moments later, holding a cardboard display about renewable energy, his face lit up with pride. Ms. Davis says I might win the science fair if I fix the solar. Panel part. Marissa smiled, her heart swelling at his enthusiasm. Lucas was smart, too smart sometimes, asking questions she couldn't always answer. He deserved more than their tiny apartment and her constant exhaustion. But he never complained, never asked for the things she couldn't give him. "You're going to knock their socks off," she said, handing him his lunch bag. "Mrs. Rodriguez is picking you up today, remember? I'll be home by the time you wake up tomorrow." Lucas nodded, his expression turning serious. "I know, Mom, I'll be good." She hugged him tight, inhaling the scent of his shampoo. "You're always good. That's not what I worry about." "Then what do you worry about?" he asked, looking up at her. With eyes so like his father's, it sometimes hurt to look at them. "That you'll grow up too fast and won't need your old mom anymore," she said lightly, brushing his cheek with her thumb. Lucas rolled his eyes in that dramatic way only pre-teens could master. "That's silly. I'll always need you." The simple statement warmed her through, chasing away some of the exhaustion from her double shift the day before. After Lucas left with their neighbor for school, Marissa fell into bed, setting her alarm for 9 p.m. As she drifted off to sleep, her mind wandered back to the strange guest from the night before. Ezra Callahan, with his haunted eyes and drenched suit, had seemed so out of place in the old hotel, like a ghost who had wandered in from another world. That night, the lobby was quiet again. Marissa sat at the front desk, a textbook open in front of her. She was taking online classes in business management, chipping away at a degree one class at a time. It was slow going, but someday she wouldn't have to work night shifts anymore. At just past midnight, the elevator doors opened, and Ezra Callahan stepped out. He was dressed more casually now, in dark jeans and a grey sweater that looked like it cost more than her monthly rent. He didn't acknowledge her as he crossed the lobby and settled into one of the armchairs near the unlit fireplace. He just sat there, staring at nothing, his hands clasped loosely in his lap. Marissa tried to focus on her reading, but her eyes kept drifting to the motionless figure in the corner. After half an hour, she stood and walked over to the fireplace. "Would you like me to light this?" she asked. "It gets chilly in here at night." He looked up, almost startled, as if he'd forgotten she was there. "If you want to." She knelt and arranged the logs, striking a match. The fire caught quickly, casting a warm glow across the lobby. "There, that's better." When she turned around, she found him watching her with an intensity that made her self-conscious. "Is there anything else you need, Mr. Callahan? Coffee, perhaps?" "No." He looked away, back at the flames. "Thank you." Marissa nodded and returned to her desk, trying not to feel hurt by his dismissal. This was her job, after all. He wasn't here to make friends. For the next 3 nights, the same pattern repeated. Ezra would come down around midnight, sit by the fireplace and stare into the flames for hours. He never brought a book or looked at his phone. He just sat there, like a man waiting for something he couldn't name. On the 4th night, Marissa decided to try something different. When he took his usual seat, she prepared a mug of tea and brought it over to him, setting it on the small table by his chair. He looked at the steaming mug with surprise. "What's this?" "Chamomile tea," she said. "It helps with sleep." He didn't thank her, but he did pick up the mug and take a small sip. Marissa counted that as progress. On the 5th night, she turned on some soft jazz music, just loud enough to fill the silence without being intrusive. She noticed how his shoulders relaxed slightly as the gentle saxophone notes floated through the lobby. And on the 6th night, something changed. Marissa was updating the hotel's booking system when Ezra's voice broke the silence. "Do you ever wish the dark would last just a little longer?" She looked up, startled. It was the first time he had initiated a conversation. His face was half in shadow, the firelight playing across his features, softening the hard lines of worry. That seemed permanently etched there. Marissa considered the question, closing her laptop. Sometimes it's the only place people stop looking at you like you're broken. Something in his expression shifted, a small crack in his carefully maintained facade. For a brief moment, she saw not the wealthy businessman or the troubled guest, but simply a man in pain. "Yes," he said quietly. "Exactly that." Marissa moved to the chair opposite his, drawn by the unexpected connection. The night shift has its perks that way. No one expects much from you at 3 a.m. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Is that why you work it? For the low expectations? She laughed softly. No, I work it because it lets me be home when my son wakes up. I can make him breakfast, help him get ready for school. The important stuff. You have a son. Something sparked in his eyes. Interest, maybe, or surprise. Lucas. He's 10. Going on 30, if you ask him. She smiled, thinking of her son's serious face that morning as he had explained his latest invention idea. That's a good age, Ezra said. Old enough to have real conversations, young enough to still think their parents have all the answers. The observation was so accurate, it surprised her. Do you have children, Mr. Callahan? The question seemed to catch him off guard. Pain flashed across his face, quick and sharp before he masked it. No, I don't. Marissa sensed she had stepped onto dangerous ground. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to pry. You weren't. He looked down at his hands. It's a normal question. Silence fell between them, but it felt different now, charged with something unspoken. Marissa stood, feeling she should give him space. I should get back to work. Ezra nodded, but as she turned to go, he spoke again. Thank you for the tea and the music. You're welcome, Mr. Callahan. Ezra, he said quietly. My name is Ezra. Marissa smiled. Good night, Ezra. That night, when he finally went back to his room as dawn approached, something had shifted between them. A door had opened, just a crack, but enough to let in a sliver of light. In the days that followed, their midnight conversations became a ritual. Ezra never spoke about his work or why he was staying at the Evermont. Marissa never asked. Instead, they talked about small things, books they had read, places they had seen, the changing seasons. Ezra didn't tell her who he was, though Marissa knew from the magazines and news reports. And strangely, it didn't matter. Here, in the quiet hours between midnight and dawn, he wasn't Ezra Callahan, CEO of Callahan Ventures. He was just Ezra, a man who liked his tea with honey and preferred classical music to jazz. One night, about 2 weeks after his arrival, Marissa's phone rang while Ezra was sitting in his usual spot. She answered quickly, recognizing Lucas's number. Mom? His voice was small and frightened. Lucas, what's wrong? Marissa's heart raced. Are you okay? I had the dream again, the one about Dad. Marissa closed her eyes, pain squeezing her chest. Oh, sweetheart, you're okay. It was just a dream. It felt real, Lucas said, his voice catching, like he was really there. And then he was gone again. No, honey. She kept her voice gentle, aware of Ezra watching her from across the lobby. Take a deep breath for me, okay? In through your nose, out through your mouth. She listened as Lucas followed her instructions, his breathing gradually slowing. That's it. You're doing great, she said. Now remember what we talked about. Your dad loved you very much, and he'd be so proud of the boy you're becoming. I wish I could remember him better, Lucas whispered. I know. Me too. Marissa swallowed hard. Why don't you turn on your star projector, the one we got for your birthday, and I'll stay on the phone until you fall asleep. True to her word, Marissa stayed on the line, humming softly until Lucas's breathing deepened into sleep. Only then did she hang up, wiping quickly at her eyes. When she looked up, Ezra was watching her with an expression she couldn't read. I'm sorry about that, she said. Lucas has nightmares sometimes. You speak to him like his soul is fragile, Ezra said, his voice rough with emotion. Like he matters. Marissa nodded, thrown by the intensity in his gaze. Because he does. Ezra looked away, but not before she caught the flash of emotion in his eyes. Your husband, he asked quietly. He died 6 years ago. Car accident. The words still hurt to say, even after all this time. Lucas was 4. He doesn't remember much, but the dreams come sometimes. I'm sorry. The words were simple, but his eyes held a depth of understanding that took her breath away. In that moment, Marissa realized that Ezra wasn't just listening to her words. He was hearing them, truly hearing them, in a way few people ever had, and something warm and unexpected bloomed in her chest, something she hadn't felt in a very long time. Hope. As the weeks passed, Ezra's presence at the Evermont Hotel became a fixture in Marissa's nights. Their conversations grew longer, deeper. They still avoided certain topics, his business, her financial struggles, but in other ways they revealed parts of themselves they rarely shared with anyone else. One night, Ezra arrived at his usual time but with something tucked under his arm. "A book. I thought you might like this," he said, placing it on the counter. It was a dog-eared copy of The Secret Garden. Marissa picked it up, running her fingers over the worn cover. "I haven't read this since I was a girl. It made me think of you," Ezra said, then looked embarrassed by his own words. "The way you talk about hope, about things growing even in unlikely places." She smiled, touched by the gesture. "Thank you. I'll read it on my break." The next night, he brought another book, and then another. Soon it became their ritual, Ezra sharing pieces of himself through the stories he loved, and Marissa offering her thoughts when she finished them. During one of their late-night talks, Marissa found herself telling him about her dreams for Lucas. "He's always inventing things," she said with pride. "Last week he made a bird feeder that sorts seeds by size. Said different birds like different seeds." Ezra smiled, a real smile that reached his eyes. "He sounds like a remarkable boy. He is smarter than I'll ever be," she sighed. "I wish I could give him more, better schools, more opportunities." "You give him what matters," Ezra said quietly. "Time, attention, love." Marissa looked at him curiously. "You say that, like you know what it's like to go without those things." A shadow crossed his face. "My parents were busy people. My father built his company from nothing and it became his whole world. My mother had her charities, her social circle. They provided everything except presence." "That must have been lonely." Ezra nodded, his gaze distant. "I promised myself I'd do things differently when I had my own family." His voice caught slightly. "But some promises are harder to keep than others." Marissa sensed there was more to that statement, a deeper pain he wasn't ready to share. She didn't push. Instead, she told him about Lucas's science project, about how he stayed up late tinkering with solar panels and making careful notes in his journal. Ezra listened intently, asking questions that showed genuine interest. As dawn approached and Ezra prepared to return to his room, he hesitated. "I'd like to meet him someday, your son." The words hung between them, laden with meaning. This wasn't just about meeting Lucas. It was about stepping beyond the boundaries of their midnight conversations, into the real world of daylight and consequences. "I'd like that too," Marissa said, surprising herself with how much she meant. The following Saturday was Marissa's day off. She and Lucas spent the morning at the park, enjoying the warm spring sunshine. Lucas flew his homemade kite, constructed from recycled plastic and twine, while Marissa watched from a bench thinking about Ezra. She hadn't told Lucas about him yet. It seemed too complicated, too new. But sometimes she caught herself wondering what they might think of each other. "Mom, look how high it's going," Lucas called, his face alight with joy as the kite soared. "I see it," she called back, shading her eyes against the sun. "You got the design just right this time." As Lucas ran across the grass, guiding the kite through the air, Marissa noticed a familiar figure walking along the park path. Her heart skipped a beat. Ezra. He was dressed casually in jeans and a light sweater, his hair tousled by the breeze. He hadn't seen her yet, and for a moment Marissa considered not calling out to him. Their relationship existed in the quiet darkness of the hotel lobby. What would it mean to bring it into the light? But before she could decide, Lucas's kite dipped suddenly and crashed near the path where Ezra was walking. Lucas ran to retrieve it, and Ezra stopped to help, picking up the kite and examining its construction with obvious interest. Marissa watched as her son and Ezra talked, Lucas gesturing excitedly, explaining something about his design. Ezra nodded, pointing to different parts of the kite, suggesting something that made Lucas's eyes widen with interest. She stood and walked over to them, her heart pounding. "Ezra," she said when she reached them. "What a surprise." He looked up and the smile that spread across his face made her breath catch. "Marissa, I was just admiring your son's engineering skills." Lucas looked between them, curious. Mom, you know him? Mr. Callahan is staying at the hotel where I work, Marissa explained. Ezra, this is my son, Lucas. Your mom has told me a lot about you, Ezra said, offering his hand to Lucas. She says you're quite the inventor. Lucas shook his hand solemnly. Are you an inventor too? Not exactly, but I work with inventors, people who create new technologies. Lucas's eyes lit up. Like what? As Ezra described some of the innovations his company had developed, Marissa watched her son's face. Lucas was captivated, hanging on every word, asking questions that Ezra answered with patience and respect. Would you like to join us? Marissa found herself asking. We were going to have lunch at the cafe across the street. Ezra hesitated, then nodded. I'd like that, if it's not an imposition. It's not, she assured him. The three of them spent the afternoon together. Ezra helped Lucas fix his kite, making it fly higher than before. They had lunch at the small cafe, where Lucas peppered Ezra with questions about science and business. And Marissa watched as Ezra answered each one thoughtfully, treating Lucas not as a child, but as a person worth listening to. Later, as Lucas ran ahead to the ice cream stand, Ezra turned to Marissa. He's amazing, just like you said. She smiled, watching her son. He's the best thing in my life. You've done an incredible job with him, Ezra said, his voice sincere, especially on your own. It hasn't been easy. Marissa hesitated, then decided to share something she rarely admitted. Sometimes I worry that I'm not enough, that he needs more than what I can give him. Ezra's expression grew serious. Marissa, that boy doesn't just respect you. He adores you. It's in every way he looks at you. Trust me, you're more than enough. His words warmed something deep inside her. For so long, she had carried the weight of being both mother and father, provider and nurturer. To hear someone, especially someone like Ezra, affirm that she was doing well meant more than she could express. As the day drew to a close, Lucas asked if Ezra would come to his science fair the following week. I'm presenting my solar energy project, he explained earnestly. Mom's coming, but she said it might be nice to have someone else who understands the technical stuff. Ezra glanced at Marissa, seeking her approval. When she nodded, he turned back to Lucas. I wouldn't miss it. The night before the science fair, Marissa was arranging fresh flowers in the hotel lobby when Sarah Jenkins, the hotel manager, approached her desk. Marissa, could I speak with you for a moment? Something in Sarah's tone made Marissa's stomach tighten. Of course. Sarah led her to the small office behind the reception area. I've noticed you've been spending a lot of time with Mr. Callahan. During your shifts, Marissa felt her cheeks warm. We talk sometimes when the lobby is quiet. Is that a problem? Normally, no. We encourage our staff to be friendly with guests. Sarah hesitated. But Mr. Callahan isn't just any guest. Do you know who he is? I know he runs a large company, Marissa said cautiously. Sarah raised an eyebrow. Callahan Ventures is one of the biggest technology firms in the country. Ezra, Callahan is worth billions. She placed a magazine on the desk. And he's been through a lot recently. Marissa looked down at the business magazine. The cover featured Ezra's face, more polished than she was used to seeing him, with the headline, Callahan's Comeback, CEO Returns After Tragedy. What tragedy? Marissa asked, her mouth suddenly dry. Sarah's expression softened. His wife and daughter died in a boating accident last year. He took a leave of absence from his company. There were rumors he might not come back at all. The revelation hit Marissa. Like a physical blow, a wife, a daughter, gone. No wonder his eyes held such pain. No wonder he sought the quiet darkness of the hotel lobby at night, when sleep wouldn't come. I didn't know, she said quietly. I'm not telling you this to upset you, Sarah said gently. But the Evermont has a reputation to maintain. Mr. Callahan chose our hotel for its discretion. If he wanted company, he could have stayed somewhere more lively. Are you asking me to stop talking to him? Marissa felt a flash of indignation. I'm asking you to remember your position, Sarah replied. You're here to provide a service, not personal connection. The words stung, but Marissa nodded. I understand. After Sarah left, Marissa sat alone in the office, trying to process what she'd learned. Ezra had lost his family. The pain she sometimes glimpsed in his eyes had a name, a source, and she had invited him into her life, into Lucas's life, without knowing any of it. That night, Ezra came down to the lobby at his usual time. He was dressed more formally than usual in a suit that reminded Marissa of the night he'd first arrived. "You look nice," she said, trying to keep her tone professional, aware of Sarah's warning. Ezra ran a hand through his hair, looking almost nervous. "I have a meeting tomorrow back at the office." "Oh." Marissa felt a twinge of disappointment. "Are you checking out?" "No," he said quickly. "Not yet, but it's time I started facing some responsibilities I've been avoiding." Marissa nodded, arranging papers on her desk that didn't need arranging. "That's good. I'm sure your company needs you." An awkward silence fell between them. Ezra studied her face. "Is everything all right? You seem different tonight." Marissa hesitated. Part of her wanted to pretend nothing had changed, to keep their conversations in the safe bubble they'd created. But she thought of the pain he'd carried alone, the loss he'd never mentioned. "Why didn't you tell me about your family?" she asked. Softly, Ezra went very still. "Who told you?" "It doesn't matter. Why didn't you tell me?" He looked away, his jaw tight. "Because when I'm with you, I can almost forget. For a few hours I can be someone else, someone who isn't defined by loss." The raw honesty in his voice made her heart ache. "I'm so sorry, Ezra. I can't imagine what you've been through." "No one can," he said, his voice hollow. "Catherine and I were college sweethearts. Emma was 6. They were everything to me." Marissa moved from behind the desk, drawn by his pain. "What happened?" "A storm came up suddenly while they were out on the lake at our vacation home. I was supposed to be with them, but I stayed behind to take a business call." His eyes filled. With tears he refused to let fall. By the time the rescue teams reached the boat, it was too late. "Oh, Ezra." Without thinking, Marissa reached for his hand. He gripped her fingers tightly. "For months I couldn't function, couldn't lead the company my father built. Couldn't even get out of bed some days." He took a shaky breath. "Then one night I just started driving. No destination in mind, and I ended up here." "At the Evermont?" He nodded. "I checked in, planning to stay one night. But then," his eyes met hers. "There was something about this place. About you. The way you didn't treat me like I was broken, or like I was Ezra Callahan, CEO. You just treated me like a person." Marissa understood then why their midnight conversations had meant so much to him. In the quiet hours of the night, he had found a space where he could simply exist without the weight of his name or his grief. "I still see you that way," she said softly. "Knowing about your loss doesn't change that." Ezra's eyes searched hers. "Doesn't it? People look at me differently once they know, like they're waiting for me to fall apart." "I'm not waiting for anything," Marissa said. "I just want to know you, the real you with all your joy and pain." Something shifted in his expression. Hope, perhaps, or the first fragile tendrils of trust. He reached out, his fingers brushing her cheek in a touch so gentle it made her heart race. "Marissa," he began, his voice rough with emotion. But before he could continue, the hotel doors swung open, and a woman walked in, tall, elegant, dressed in an expensive suit that made Marissa instantly conscious of her simple uniform. "Ezra!" the woman called, her voice sharp with surprise. "What are you doing here?" Ezra dropped his hand from Marissa's face, turning toward the newcomer with a look of disbelief. "Diane, how did you find me?" The woman, Diane, approached them, her heels clicking on the marble floor. She cast a dismissive glance at Marissa before focusing on Ezra. "Your assistant finally broke down and told me. The board meeting is tomorrow, Ezra. We've been trying to reach you for days." "I'll be there," Ezra said, his voice suddenly cool and professional, a tone Marissa had never heard from him before. "As I told Martin when he called yesterday." Diane crossed her arms. "And what exactly have you been doing in this?" She looked around the lobby with thinly veiled disdain. "This place?" Ezra's jaw tightened. "That's none of your concern. It is when the future of the company is at stake." Diane's gaze shifted to Marissa, taking in her uniform, her simple appearance. Understanding dawned in her eyes, followed by something like contempt. "I see. Well, this is a new low even for grief." Marissa felt the insult like a slap. She took a step back, suddenly aware of how they must look, the billionaire CEO and the night desk clerk. "Diane, enough," Ezra snapped. "Marissa is a friend." "A friend," Diane repeated skeptically. "Ezra, you need to come back to reality. The company is struggling without you. The board is considering options you won't like." "I told you I'll be at the meeting," Ezra said. "Now if you'll excuse us." But the moment was broken. Marissa could feel it. The real world had crashed into their private sanctuary, bringing with it all the complications and differences they had been ignoring. "I should get back to work," she said quietly, retreating behind the reception desk, where she belonged. Ezra gave her a look of apology but didn't stop her. He turned back to Diane, his posture stiff. "Let's discuss this privately." As they walked toward the elevator, Marissa heard Diane say, "Really, Ezra? A hotel clerk? What would Catherine think?" The words cut deep, reminding Marissa of all the reasons why whatever was growing between her and Ezra could never work. They came from different worlds. He was grieving his wife and child, and she was, in the end, just a hotel clerk with a son to raise and bills to pay. When Ezra and Diane disappeared into the elevator, Marissa sat down heavily at her desk, her heart aching with a loss she had no right to feel. The next day, Lucas's excitement about the science fair was contagious. He wore his best shirt, ironed carefully by Marissa that morning, and carried his solar panel project with pride. "Do you think Mr. Callahan will really come?" he asked as they walked toward the school. Marissa's heart sank. After last night, she doubted Ezra would remember the science fair. He would be in his board meeting, dealing with whatever crisis had brought Diane to the Evermont. "I'm not sure, honey," she said gently. "He mentioned he had an important work meeting today." Lucas's face fell slightly. "Oh, well, that's okay. You'll be there." "Front row," she promised, squeezing his shoulder. The school gymnasium was crowded, with parents and children, science projects displayed on rows of tables. Lucas set up his station, carefully arranging his solar panels to catch the light from the overhead fixtures. As the judges began making their rounds, Marissa stood to the side, watching proudly as Lucas explained his project with confidence and enthusiasm. He had worked so hard on it, staying up late to perfect the design, using materials they could afford. She was so focused on her son that she didn't notice the tall figure entering the gymnasium until whispers began spreading through the crowd. Parents turned to stare, some pulling out their phones to take discreet photos. Ezra Callahan, dressed in an impeccable suit, was making his way through the science fair. And he was heading straight for Lucas's table. Marissa's heart pounded as Ezra approached them. He nodded to her with a warm smile, then turned his full attention to Lucas. "Sorry I'm late," he said. "Did I miss your presentation?" Lucas's face lit up. "Mr. Callahan, you came." "Of course I did," Ezra said. "I wouldn't miss it. Now show me how this works." As Lucas launched into his explanation, Marissa noticed people watching them, whispering behind their hands. Ezra Callahan, the reclusive CEO who had disappeared from public view after his family's tragic accident, was here, at a middle school science fair, listening intently to a 10-year-old boy. And the way he looked at Lucas, with genuine interest and respect, made something warm unfurl in Marissa's chest. When Lucas finished his presentation, one of the judges approached, an older woman with glasses perched on her nose. She introduced herself to Ezra with barely concealed excitement. "Mr. Callahan, this is unexpected. Are you a judge today?" "No," Ezra replied simply. "I'm here as Lucas's guest." The woman looked confused, glancing between Ezra, Lucas, and Marissa. "I see. Well, we're honored to have you. Perhaps you'd like to say a few words to our young scientists after the judging." Ezra shook his head. "I'm not here for attention. I'm here for Lucas." The judges moved on, and Marissa stepped closer to Ezra. "You came," she said softly. "What about your board meeting?" "I rescheduled," he said. "Some things are more important." The simple statement and the look in his eyes as he said it told Marissa everything she needed to know. Whatever had happened after Diane's arrival last night, Ezra had made a choice, and he had chosen to be here with them. As the science fair continued, with Lucas proudly showing off his project to other students and parents, Ezra leaned close to Marissa. "I need to talk to you," he said quietly. "About last night. About Diane." Marissa nodded, her stomach tightening with anxiety. "Not here. Tonight," he said. "When your shift starts." Before she could respond, Lucas ran over, grabbing both their hands. "They're announcing the winners. Come on." They allowed themselves to be pulled to the front of the gymnasium. Marissa held her breath as the principal began reading names, starting with honorable mentions and working up to the top prizes. And first place in the Energy and Environment category goes to Lucas Cole for his adaptive solar energy collector. Lucas froze for a moment, disbelief on his face. Then he let out a whoop of joy, jumping up and down before running to accept his ribbon and certificate. Marissa felt tears well in her eyes as she watched her son receive his prize. He had worked so hard with so little, and he had succeeded. When Lucas returned, clutching his ribbon, he threw his arms around Marissa. "I won, Mom. I really won." "You did, sweetheart," she said, hugging him tightly. "I'm so proud of you." Then, to her surprise, Lucas turned and hugged Ezra too. "Thank you for coming," he said, his voice muffled against Ezra's suit jacket. Ezra looked stunned for a moment, then his arms came around Lucas, his expression softening into something that made Marissa's heart ache. "I wouldn't have missed it for the world." As they left the science fair, walking together through the school parking lot, Marissa felt a strange sense of rightness. The three of them together, celebrating Lucas's achievement. But she also felt fear, because whatever was growing between her and Ezra was becoming real, and real things could break. Tonight, she would hear what he had to say, and then she would have to decide whether to protect her heart and Lucas's, or take a chance on something. She had stopped believing in long-ago hope. That evening, Marissa arrived at the Evermont with a mixture of anticipation and dread. The lobby was unusually busy. A wedding party had checked in, filling the old hotel with laughter and chatter. She greeted the night manager, who looked relieved to see her. "Thank goodness you're here," he said. "It's been chaos since that magazine." "Article came out," Marissa frowned. "What magazine article?" He grabbed a copy of Business Weekly from under the counter and handed it to her. "This hit the stands this afternoon." Marissa's heart dropped as she saw the headline, "Callahan's Secret Hideaway, Billionaire CEO Found at Historic Hotel." Beneath it was a photo, grainy but recognizable, of Ezra walking into the Evermont. "There have been reporters calling all day," the manager said, "and photographers hanging around outside. Mrs. Jenkins is having a fit." Before Marissa could respond, Sarah Jenkins herself emerged from the office, her expression tight with stress. "Marissa, a word?" In the small office, Sarah didn't bother with pleasantries. "This situation has gotten out of hand. Mr. Callahan's presence was supposed to be discreet." "I had nothing to do with this article," Marissa said defensively. "Perhaps not directly," Sarah conceded. "But your friendship with him has been noticed. By staff, by guests. Word gets around." She pinched the bridge of her nose. "The Evermont has always prided itself on privacy. Our wealthy clients stay with us because we keep their secrets." "I've never told anyone who he is," Marissa insisted. "It doesn't matter now." Sarah looked tired. "The damage is done. We've had to hire extra security to keep the paparazzi away." Marissa felt sick. Had their public appearance at Lucas's science fair contributed to this? "What can I do?" "Keep your distance," Sarah said firmly. "Mr. Callahan is already dealing. With enough tragedy in his life, he doesn't need more complications." The word stung, but Marissa knew Sarah was right. She was a complication, one that Ezra might not need as he tried to rebuild his life. "I understand," she said quietly. "Good." Sarah's expression softened slightly. "You're a valuable employee, Marissa. I'd hate to lose you over this." The implied threat wasn't lost on Marissa. Her job, the stable income she needed for Lucas, for their tiny apartment, for his future, was at stake. When she returned to the front desk, The lobby had quieted. The wedding guests had moved to the hotel restaurant, leaving behind the faint scent of perfume and the echo of laughter. Marissa busied herself with paperwork, trying not to watch the elevator doors, trying not to hope that Ezra would appear. But as midnight approached, she found her eyes drawn to his usual chair by the fireplace. Empty. She told herself it was better this way. After the magazine article, after Sarah's warning, maybe Ezra had realized the same thing she had, that whatever was growing between them was impossible. At 12:30 a.m. her desk phone rang. Front desk, Marissa speaking. "It's Ezra." His voice was low, tense. "Can you come to room 312? Marissa hesitated. "I can't leave the desk unattended." "Please," he said, "it's important, 5 minutes." She glanced around the empty lobby. It was against protocol, but 5 minutes, she agreed. She took the service stairs to the 3rd floor, her heart pounding with each step. What did he want? To tell her? Was he leaving? Was this goodbye? When she reached 312, she straightened her uniform and knocked softly. Ezra opened the door immediately, as if he'd been waiting right behind it. He was dressed casually in a t-shirt and jeans, his hair slightly rumpled. The room behind him was dimly lit. "Thank you for coming," he said, stepping back to let her in. Marissa hesitated before entering. She'd never been in a guest's room during her shift. It felt like crossing a line. "I shouldn't be here," she said. "If anyone saw me, I know. I'm sorry." Ezra ran a hand through his hair. "But after that magazine article, I couldn't come downstairs. There are photographers watching." "The lobby," Marissa nodded, understanding. "I saw the article. I'm sorry, Ezra. This is exactly what you were trying to avoid. It's not your fault." He gestured to the sitting area of the suite. "Please sit, just for a minute." Marissa perched on the edge of an armchair, too nervous to relax. Ezra remained, standing, pacing slightly. "I had a long conversation with Diane yesterday," he began, "after the science fair." Marissa tensed, preparing herself for what was coming. Diane, with her elegant clothes and shared history with Ezra, represented everything Marissa wasn't. "She's been running the company in my absence," Ezra continued, "keeping things afloat. But there's a faction on the board that wants to take Callahan Ventures in a new direction. They're using my grief as an excuse to push me out." "That's terrible," Marissa said sincerely. Despite her complicated feelings about Ezra's business life, she knew how much the company meant to him. It was his father's legacy. "I've been hiding," Ezra admitted, "using my pain as a reason to abdicate my responsibilities. But seeing Lucas yesterday, watching how hard he worked on that project, how proud he was..." He looked at her with intense eyes. "It reminded me that life goes on, that we have to keep trying, keep building. Even after loss." Marissa felt a lump form in her throat. "Lucas has that effect on people." "It's not just Lucas," Ezra said softly. "It's you too. The way you've rebuilt your life after losing your husband. The way you face each day with such strength and grace." Heat rose to Marissa's cheeks. "I didn't have a choice." "We always have choices," Ezra said. "I chose to hide. You chose to live." He moved closer, sitting on the coffee table directly in front of her. "You've shown me how to start living again, Marissa." His words made her heart race, but fear tempered her response. "Ezra, we come from different worlds. You're rebuilding a billion-dollar company. I'm trying to keep my job at this hotel. Do you think I care about that?" he asked, genuine confusion in his voice. "Maybe not now," Marissa said. "But eventually you'll return to your real life, board meetings and charity galas and people like Diane. And I'll still be here, working the night shift." Ezra reached for her hands holding them in his. "What if I told you I don't want to go back to that life, at least not the way it was before?" Marissa looked down at their joined hands. "What do you mean?" "I've been thinking a lot about what matters, about what Catherine would have wanted for me." His voice grew rough with emotion. "She wouldn't have wanted me to stop living, to stop caring, to hide away in grief forever." "Of course not," Marissa said gently. "When I'm with you and Lucas, I feel like myself again. Not Ezra Callahan, CEO. Not the man who lost his family, just me." He squeezed her hands. "I don't want to lose that feeling." Before Marissa could respond, her phone buzzed. the alarm she'd set to remind herself to return to the desk. "I have to go back," she said reluctantly. "I've already been gone too long." Ezra nodded, releasing her hands. "Will you meet me tomorrow after your shift? There's something I want to show you." Despite all her reservations, Marissa found herself nodding. "Where?" "The cafe across from the park. 7:30? "Okay," she agreed, standing to leave. "Ezra, whatever you're thinking, just meet me," he said. "Please?" She nodded again and slipped out the door, her thoughts in turmoil as she returned to the front desk. Marissa barely slept the next day. Her conversation with Ezra kept replaying in her mind as she tossed and turned. What did he want to show her? And why did it feel like she was standing on the edge of a cliff, about to take a step that would change everything? At 7:30, after dropping Lucas at his friend's house for a sleepover, she entered the cafe. Ezra was already there, in a quiet corner booth. He stood when he saw her, a warm smile lighting his face. "You came," he said, as if he'd been afraid she wouldn't. "I said I would." Marissa slid into the booth across from him. "What's this about, Ezra?" Instead of answering, he placed a folder on the table between them. "Open it." Curious, Marissa flipped open the folder. Inside were architectural drawings, detailed plans for what looked like a large building with multiple wings. She frowned, not understanding. "What is this?" "The Callahan Innovation Center for Young Minds," Ezra said, his eyes bright with enthusiasm. "A place where kids like Lucas can explore science and technology with resources they might not have at home or school." Marissa's eyes widened as she flipped through the plans. There were laboratories, workshop spaces, a library, even an observatory. "This is amazing," she said. "Where is it going to be built?" "Right here," Ezra said, "in this community, where Lucas and other kids who don't have access to expensive private schools can use it." Marissa looked up at him, realization dawning. "This is because of Lucas's science project." Ezra nodded. "Partly. Seeing how much he accomplished with limited resources made me think about all the other kids out there, with brilliant minds and big dreams, but without the tools they need." He leaned forward, his passion evident. "Callahan Ventures has always focused on adult innovators, but the real future lies with children like Lucas." Marissa was touched by his vision, by how deeply he had been affected by her son. But she still didn't understand why he was sharing this with her. "It's a wonderful idea," she said. "Lucas will be thrilled when it opens." "I want you to help me build it," Ezra said. Marissa blinked in surprise. "Me? How?" "I need someone who understands what kids like Lucas need. Someone with vision, with heart." He reached across the table, taking her hand. "I want you to run it, Marissa." She stared at him, speechless. "But I don't have the qualifications. I never even finished my business degree." "You have something more important than degrees," Ezra said. "You have insight, compassion, and you know firsthand the difference opportunities like this can make in a child's life." Marissa's mind raced with the possibilities. Running a center like this would mean no more night shifts, no more struggling to make ends meet. It would mean being able to give Lucas the opportunities she'd always dreamed of for him. But doubt crept in. Is this just because of what's happening between us?" Ezra's expression grew serious. "This isn't about us, Marissa. It's about the future, about creating something meaningful out of tragedy," he paused. "Though I won't pretend my feelings for you didn't play a role in realizing how important this is." "Your feelings?" Marissa's heart skipped a beat. Ezra's gaze softened. "I think you know how I feel about you. How could I not fall for someone who showed me how to live again?" Before Marissa could respond, the cafe door opened with a bang. A man with a camera rushed in, followed by another with a notepad. "Mr. Callahan, is it true you're stepping down as CEO?" the reporter called out. Ezra's face darkened. "How did they find us?" More reporters appeared at the windows, cameras flashing. Marissa felt exposed, vulnerable under their curious stares. "We need to go," Ezra said, throwing some bills on the table and gathering the folder. "My car's out back." They slipped through the kitchen, apologizing to the startled staff, and out. The service entrance. Ezra's car, a sleek, understated sedan, was parked in the alley. Once they were safely inside, doors locked against the pursuing reporters, Ezra turned to her with an apologetic look. "I'm sorry about that. The press has been relentless since that magazine article." "It's okay," Marissa said, though her heart was pounding. "But this is what I meant, Ezra. This is your world now. Reporters and headlines and people watching your every move." Ezra started the car, pulling out of the alley. "Where can I take you? Your apartment?" Marissa hesitated. "No, I don't want them following us there. Lucas doesn't need that." Ezra nodded, understanding. "My house, then. It has security gates. They can't get in." The idea of going to Ezra's home, the place he had shared with Catherine and Emma, made Marissa nervous, but she nodded her agreement. As they drove through the city and into the upscale suburbs beyond, Marissa watched the neighborhoods change from modest apartment buildings to increasingly lavish homes. Finally, Ezra turned down a private road and stopped at a gate, punching in a code. The gate swung open to reveal a stunning property, not the ostentatious mansion Marissa had expected, but a beautiful modern home nestled among trees, with sweeping views of the lake beyond. "This is where you live?" she asked as they drove up the winding driveway. "This is one of my homes," Ezra admitted. "I haven't been here much since the accident. It was our favorite place, Catherine, Emma, and mine." Marissa felt like an intruder. "Ezra, are you sure about this? Being here must be painful for you." He parked in front of the house and turned to face her. "It was for a long time, but maybe that's part of healing. Reclaiming the places that hold our memories, making new ones alongside them." Inside, the house was warm and inviting, with large windows overlooking the lake. It was tastefully furnished, but had a lived-in feel. A child's drawing framed on the wall, family photos on shelves, a row of colorful mugs hanging in the kitchen. Ezra showed her to the living room, where a floor-to-ceiling bookshelf took up one wall. "Make yourself comfortable. I'll make some coffee." While he was in the kitchen, Marissa found herself drawn to the photographs. Catherine had been beautiful, blonde and elegant with a warm smile. And Emma, with her father's dark hair and her mother's eyes, looked like a happy, creative child. There were photos of the three of them sailing, hiking, building a snowman, a family, a real family that had been shattered by tragedy. "What am I doing here?" Marissa thought suddenly. This man had a full life, a family he loved, and now he was offering her a job, talking about feelings, was it real? Or was she just a distraction from his grief? When Ezra returned with 2 mugs of coffee, he found her standing before the photos, her expression troubled. "They were my whole world," he said quietly, handing her a mug. "I can see that," Marissa replied. "They were beautiful." "Yes." Ezra looked at the photos with a sad smile. "Catherine would have liked you. You have her practical nature, her kindness." Marissa took a sip of coffee, not knowing how to respond. "I'm not trying to replace her, Ezra. I couldn't." "I know that," he said gently. "No one could replace Catherine or Emma." He set his mug down and turned to face her fully. "But that doesn't mean there isn't room in my heart for something new. Something different, but equally precious." His words touched something deep inside her, but fear held her back. "This is all happening so fast. The job offer, these feelings." "Too fast?" Ezra asked. "Maybe." Marissa set her mug down. "I need to think about what's best for Lucas, for me." "Of course." Ezra looked disappointed but understanding. "Can I at least drive you home?" Marissa shook her head. "I'll call a cab. I think we both need some space to figure things out." As she waited for the cab to arrive, Ezra brought out the folder with the Innovation Center plans again. "Whatever you decide about us, the job offer stands. You're the right person for this, Marissa. Think about it." She nodded, taking the folder. "I will." The cab arrived and Ezra walked her to the door. Before she left, he took her hand. "Marissa, I want you to know something. Meeting you, getting to know Lucas, it's helped me find my way back to life. Whatever happens next, I'll always be grateful for that." Tears pricked her eyes. "You've helped us too, Ezra. More than you know." He leaned down, his lips brushing her cheek in the gentlest of kisses. "Take all the time you need. I'll be here." As the cab drove away, Marissa looked back at the beautiful house by the lake. Ezra stood in the doorway watching her go. So much had changed in the week since he had walked into the Evermont Hotel. She had changed, and now she had a decision to make that would affect not just her future, but Lucas's as well. When Marissa arrived home, she was surprised to find Sarah Jenkins sitting on the steps of her apartment building. "Mrs. Jenkins? What are you doing here?" Sarah stood, her expression grave. "We need to talk, Marissa. May I come in?" Inside the small apartment, Marissa offered her boss a cup of tea, feeling self-conscious about the modest surroundings. Sarah perched on the edge of the sofa, looking out of place in her tailored suit. "I'll be direct," Sarah said. "There was an incident at the hotel after you left this morning. Reporters. They were asking questions about you and Mr. Callahan." Marissa's stomach dropped. "What kind of questions?" Sarah pulled out her phone and showed Marissa a tabloid website. The headline made her blood run cold. "Billionaire's new love, Callahan spotted with hotel employee." Below was a photo of them at Lucas's science fair, standing close together, smiling at her son. "Oh no," Marissa whispered. "It gets worse," Sarah said grimly, scrolling down. "They've identified you, your name, where you work. They even found out about Lucas." Anger flared in Marissa's chest. "They have no right to drag my son into this." "I agree," Sarah said, "but that's the reality of Ezra Callahan's world. Everything is public." Marissa sank into a chair, the implications of Sarah's words sinking in. "What does this mean for my job?" "That's partly why I'm here." Sarah's expression softened slightly. "The board of directors is concerned about the hotel's reputation. They feel that your relationship with Mr. Callahan compromises the Evermont's commitment to guest privacy." "Are you firing me?" Marissa asked directly. "No," Sarah said, "but they want you transferred to the day shift, away from direct guest contact for a while, until this blows over." The day shift would mean not being home when Lucas woke up, not being able to help him get ready for school or have breakfast with him. It would upend the careful balance she had created in their lives. "I see," Marissa said, her voice tight. Sarah leaned forward. "Marissa, I'm not here just as your boss. I've known Ezra Callahan for years. The Evermont has been his family's retreat for decades." This was news to Marissa. "You know him personally?" "I knew Catherine too," Sarah said. "She was a remarkable woman, devoted to Ezra, to Emma. They had the kind of marriage people envy." Each word felt like a small wound to Marissa's heart. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you need to understand what you're getting into," Sarah said. "Ezra is still grieving, even if he doesn't show it. People in grief often reach for comfort in unexpected places." The implication was clear, and it echoed Marissa's own fears. "You think I'm just a distraction, a rebound?" Sarah's expression was compassionate but firm. "I think Ezra is a good man going through an unimaginable loss. And I think you're a dedicated mother who doesn't need her life turned upside down by tabloid scandals and public scrutiny." Marissa couldn't argue with that logic. The folder with the Innovation Center plans sat on her coffee table, a reminder of the decision she faced. "He offered me a job," she said suddenly, "running a new innovation center for kids." Sarah's eyebrows rose in surprise. "Did he?" "Yes. He said it was inspired by my son's science project." Sarah was quiet for a moment, considering. "That sounds like the Ezra I know, always looking for ways to create something positive." She stood to leave. "Just be careful, Marissa, for your sake and for Lucas's. Fame can be brutal, especially when it's unwanted." After Sarah left, Marissa sat alone in her quiet apartment, the tabloid article still open on her phone. She scrolled through the comments, wincing at the cruel speculation about her motives, about whether she was good enough for someone like Ezra Callahan. Was this what their life would be like if she accepted his feelings? Reporters following them, people judging them, Lucas exposed to public scrutiny? And what about Ezra himself? Sarah's words had touched on her deepest fear, that his feelings for her were born of grief, of loneliness, of a desperate need to feel something other than pain. What if months from now he realized that she and Lucas weren't what he really wanted? The sound of her phone ringing startled her. It was Mrs. Rodriguez, Lucas's babysitter. Marissa, I'm so sorry to bother you, but there are people outside my house with cameras, she said, her voice shaking. They're asking about Lucas, about you and that rich man from the newspaper. Cold. Fear gripped Marissa's heart. Is Lucas okay? He's fine playing video games with my son. He doesn't know anything's wrong. But Marissa, I don't like this. My husband is talking about calling the police. I'll be right there, Marissa said, grabbing her keys. When she arrived at the Rodriguez home, she had to push through a small crowd of reporters shouting questions. Are you and Ezra Callahan in a relationship? How did you meet? Is it true? You're a single mother. Marissa ignored them all, rushing into the house where Lucas was waiting, confused by the commotion. Mum, what's going on? He asked. Why are there people with cameras outside? Marissa forced a smile. Just a misunderstanding. Sweetheart, we're going to go home now. Mrs. Rodriguez looked worried. They followed you here, Marissa. They might follow you home. She was right. Marissa couldn't take Lucas back to their apartment with reporters on their tail. But where could they go? Making a decision, she pulled out her phone and called the one person who might be able to help. Ezra, she said when he answered. I need you. Within 20 minutes, a sleek black SUV with tinted windows pulled up to the Rodriguez house. The driver, a professional-looking woman in a suit, came to the door. Ms. Cole, I'm Helen, Mr. Callahan's head of security. He sent me to bring you and your son to his home. Marissa thanked the Rodriguezes for their help and hurried Lucas to the car. The security team expertly managed to lose the few reporters who tried to follow them. Mum, what's happening? Lucas asked as they drove. Why are those people following us, and who's Mr. Callahan again? Marissa sighed, realizing she couldn't shield him from the truth any longer. Remember the man from the science fair, Ezra? He's someone important in the business world, and sometimes important people get a lot of attention from newspapers and TV. Lucas frowned, processing this. But why are they interested in us? Because Ezra and I have become friends, Marissa said carefully. And some people think that's news. That's stupid, Lucas declared with the straightforward logic of a 10-year-old. Marissa laughed despite her stress. Yes, it is. When they arrived at Ezra's lakeside home, he was waiting at the door. His face showed relief when he saw them, but concern quickly followed as he noticed Lucas's confused expression and Marissa's tense posture. Are you both okay? He asked, leading them inside. We're fine, Marissa assured him. Just shaken up. There were reporters at Mrs. Rodriguez's house asking about Lucas. Anger flashed in Ezra's eyes. I'm so sorry, this is exactly what I tried to avoid by staying at the Evermont. Lucas looked around the beautiful house with wide eyes. Wow, your house is awesome. Ezra smiled at him. Thank you, Lucas. Would you like a tour while your mum and I talk? Can I see the lake? Lucas asked eagerly. Helen can show you the boathouse, Ezra said, nodding to his security chief. If that's okay with your mum. Marissa nodded, and Lucas followed Helen outside, excitement temporarily overriding his confusion about the situation. When they were alone, Ezra turned to Marissa. Tell me what happened. She explained about the tabloid article, Sarah's visit, and the reporters who had tracked down Mrs. Rodriguez's house. This is my fault, Ezra said, running a hand through his hair. I should have been more careful. After Catherine and Emma, the press has been obsessed with my personal life. It's not your fault, Marissa said. Neither of us expected this. Ezra moved closer, taking her hands in his. What can I do? Name it, and it's done. Marissa looked into his eyes, seeing the genuine concern there, the desire to protect her and Lucas. It would be so easy to lean on him, to let him solve their problems with his wealth and influence. But she thought of Sarah's words, of her own fears about being a distraction from his grief. And she thought of Lucas, who deserved stability, not the chaos of tabloid attention. I think, she began, her voice catching, I think we need some time apart. Pain flashed across Ezra's face. Marissa, just until things calm down, she clarified. Lucas is confused. My job is in jeopardy, and you're still healing, Ezra. I don't want to be something you'll regret when the grief isn't so raw. Is that what you think this is? He asked, his voice low and intense. That I'll wake up one day and regret caring about you and Lucas? I don't know, Marissa admitted, but I'm afraid to find out, especially now with all this public scrutiny. Ezra was quiet for a long moment, conflict evident in his expression. Finally, he nodded slowly. I understand. I don't like it, but I understand. Relief mingled with sadness in Marissa's chest. Thank you for understanding, for everything you've done for us. You can stay here tonight, Ezra offered, in the guest wing. It's the safest place until we figure out how to handle the press. Marissa agreed, grateful for the respite. That evening, Lucas was delighted by the boathouse, the game room, and especially by Ezra's collection of technology prototypes. The two of them spent hours discussing inventions and innovations, while Marissa watched from a distance, her heart aching at how easily they connected. Later, after Lucas had gone to bed in one of the guest rooms, Marissa found Ezra on the deck, overlooking the lake. The moon cast a silver path across the dark water. He's asleep, she said, joining him at the railing. Finally, it's been an exciting day for him, despite everything. He's an extraordinary boy, Ezra said. You've done an amazing job with him, Marissa. Thank you. She hesitated, then added, I've been thinking about your job offer. Ezra turned to her, surprise evident in his face. And? I want to accept it, she said. Not because of us, but because it's a wonderful opportunity, for me and for kids like Lucas. A smile spread across Ezra's face, genuine and warm. I'm glad. The center needs someone like you at its heart. But, Marissa continued, I think we should keep our professional and personal lives separate. At least for now. The smile faded slightly, but Ezra nodded. If that's what you need, then that's how it will be, business only. They stood in silence for a moment, the weight of unspoken feelings hanging between them. Will you still be at the Evermont when we leave tomorrow? Marissa asked. Ezra shook his head. No, it's time for me to go back to my real life, to face the board, to take responsibility for the company. His words echoed what she had said earlier about him returning to his real world, leaving her behind. But now, with the job offer, with everything that had happened, the future seemed less certain, less defined by the boundaries she had imagined. Good luck, she said softly. With the board, with everything. Thank you. He turned to face her. Fully. Marissa, I know you need time, space. I respect that. But I want you to know something. What? She asked, her heart beating faster at the intensity in his gaze. What I feel for you, it's not grief or loneliness or a distraction from pain. His voice was steady, certain. It's real, and it's not going away just because we're taking a step back. Marissa wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that the connection between them was strong enough to withstand time, distance, and public scrutiny. Let's see, she said gently. Let's give it time. Ezra nodded, accepting her caution. Time and space, you'll have both, but when you're ready, if you're ever ready, I'll be here. The promise in his words, in his eyes, made her breath catch. For a moment, she allowed herself to imagine a future where they could build something together, not replacing what he had lost, but creating something new, something that honored the past while embracing what might be. Good night, Ezra, she said, turning to go. Good night, Marissa, he replied. Sweet dreams. As she walked back to the guest wing, Marissa felt both the weight of separation and the lightness of possibility. Tomorrow, they would go their separate ways, she to her apartment, he to his company, but the connection between them remained, a fragile thread that could either snap under pressure or strengthen with time. Only time would tell which it would be. 3 months passed. Summer faded into autumn, painting the trees around the city in brilliant shades of red and gold. For Marissa, life had changed in ways she could never have imagined when Ezra Callahan first walked into the Evermont Hotel. She had left her night shift job and was now fully immersed in planning the Callahan Innovation Center. Ezra had provided an office in one of his company buildings downtown, along with a team of architects, educators, and technology experts to support her vision. The work was challenging, but fulfilling. For the first time in years, Marissa felt like she was using all of her talents, her organizational skills, her understanding of children like Lucas, her ability to bridge different perspectives. Lucas was thriving too. With Marissa's new salary, they had moved to a larger apartment in a better school district. He had joined a science club and made new friends who shared his passion for invention. But despite these positive changes, Marissa felt a lingering emptiness. She and Ezra maintained a strictly professional relationship. Their interactions were limited to weekly meetings about the Innovation Center, always with other team members present. He was unfailingly polite, respectful of the boundaries she had set. But she missed their midnight conversations, the way his eyes lit up when he talked about books he loved, the gentle way he listened to Lucas's ideas. The tabloid interest had eventually faded, as Ezra had predicted. Without new photos or gossip to fuel speculation, the press had moved on to other stories. Ezra had returned to his role as CEO of Callahan Ventures, and according to Business News, the company was thriving under his renewed leadership. On a crisp October morning, Marissa arrived at her office to find an invitation on her desk. The Callahan Foundation was hosting its annual charity gala the following weekend, and she was invited, not just as a guest, but to speak about the Innovation Center. Her first instinct was to decline. The gala would be filled with wealthy donors, business leaders and society figures. Ezra's world, not hers. But the center needed funding, and this was an opportunity to generate support from people with resources to help. After dropping Lucas at school, she called Sarah Jenkins, with whom she had maintained a friendly relationship despite leaving the Evermont. A charity gala, Sarah said when Marissa explained her dilemma. That's a big step into Ezra's social circle. I know, Marissa sighed. That's why I'm hesitating. We've been so careful to keep things professional. It has been 3 months, Sarah pointed out. The press has moved on. And it sounds like a good opportunity for the center. But what would I even wear? Marissa asked, the practical concerns suddenly overwhelming her. I don't exactly have gala-appropriate clothing, Sarah laughed. That's the easiest problem to solve. I have a friend who owns a boutique. She can help you find something perfect. With Sarah's encouragement, Marissa decided to accept the invitation. She arranged for Lucas to stay with the Rodriguezes, who had remained supportive despite the brief media frenzy. Mrs. Rodriguez had declared the whole situation better than my soap operas and was firmly on Team Ezra, as she called it. The day of the gala arrived, and Marissa stood in front of her mirror, hardly recognizing herself. Sarah's friend had found her a simple but elegant midnight blue gown that fit perfectly. Her hair, usually tied back in a practical bun, fell in soft waves around her shoulders. "Mom, you look like a princess," Lucas said from her doorway. His eyes wide, Marissa smiled, suddenly nervous. "Do you think so?" "Definitely." He flopped onto her bed. "Is Mr. Callahan going to be there?" "Yes, it's his foundation's event." Marissa turned away, pretending to adjust her earrings so Lucas wouldn't see her blush. "Are you guys friends again?" Lucas asked. In the months since their stay at Ezra's lake house, he had occasionally asked about him, clearly missing the man who had taken such interest in his inventions. "We're colleagues," Marissa said, the answer feeling inadequate even to her own ears. "That's not the same thing," Lucas observed with the directness of a child. "You liked being his friend. You smiled." More out of the mouths of babes, Marissa thought. "It's complicated, sweetheart. Grown-ups always say that when they're making things harder than they need to be," Lucas said with a wisdom beyond his years. Marissa laughed, ruffling his hair. "When did you get so smart?" "I've always been smart," he said with a grin. "You just finally noticed." The Callahan Foundation Gala was held at the city's most prestigious hotel. As the car Ezra had sent for her pulled up to the entrance, Marissa felt a flutter of panic. Red carpet, photographers, elegantly dressed guests, this was so far from her world at the Evermont. But she reminded herself why she was here, for the Innovation Center, for kids like Lucas, who deserved opportunities to explore their potential. Taking a deep breath, she stepped out of the car. Inside, the ballroom was transformed into a wonderland of lights and flowers. Circular tables surrounded a dance floor, each set with fine china and crystal. A string quartet played softly in one corner. Waiters circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres. Marissa accepted a glass of champagne, using it more as a prop than a drink, as she scanned the room for familiar faces. The Innovation Center team had been invited, but she didn't see any of them yet. Marissa. The voice behind her sent a shiver down her spine. She turned to find Ezra standing there, impossibly, handsome in a tailored tuxedo. His eyes took in her appearance with undisguised appreciation. "You look stunning," he said softly. "Thank you." She smiled, her nervousness fading in his presence. "This is quite an event." "Catherine started it 15 years ago," Ezra explained. "It was always her favorite night of the year." The mention of his late wife might once have made Marissa uncomfortable, but now it felt natural, an acknowledgement of the past that had shaped him. "She created something beautiful," Marissa said sincerely. Ezra nodded, his eyes moving around the room. "She believed in giving back, in using privilege to create opportunity for others." He looked back at Marissa. "She would have loved what you're doing with the Innovation Center." Before Marissa could respond, they were interrupted by a tall, elegant woman who placed a familiar hand on Ezra's arm. "Ezra, the Hendersons are asking about you," she said, before noticing Marissa. "Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt." "Not at all," Ezra said smoothly. "Diane, I'd like you to meet Marissa Cole, the director of our new Innovation Center. Marissa, this is Diane Reynolds, our CFO." Marissa recognized her as the woman who had appeared at the Evermont that night, looking at her with disdain. But Diane's expression now was politely curious rather than dismissive. "So you're the one Ezra won't stop talking about," Diane said, offering her hand. "The Innovation Center sounds fascinating." "Thank you," Marissa replied, surprised by the warm reception. "It's an exciting project. I'll let you two catch up," Diane said to Ezra. "But don't forget the Hendersons. They're looking to make a significant donation tonight." As Diane walked away, Marissa raised an eyebrow at Ezra. "Won't stop talking about me?" A hint of color touched his cheeks. "Diane exaggerates," Marissa smiled, enjoying his slight discomfort. The same Diane who looked at me like I was something. She'd stepped in at the Evermont. "She was worried about me then," Ezra admitted. "Everyone was. I wasn't in a good place. And now," his eyes met hers, serious and sincere, "now I'm finding my way forward. Thanks in part to you." The moment stretched between them, full of unspoken feelings. Then Ezra gestured toward the ballroom. "Let me introduce you to some people before your speech. There are several donors who are particularly interested in educational initiatives." For the next hour, Ezra guided Marissa through the crowd, introducing her to business leaders, philanthropists, and educators. She was struck by how different he seemed in this setting, confident, charismatic, but also genuine. This was his element, but he made sure she felt included, highlighting her vision for the center in every conversation. Finally, it was time for her speech. Ezra took the stage first, welcoming everyone and speaking briefly about the Foundation's work over the past year. Then he introduced Marissa with a warmth that made her blush. "When I first conceived of the Innovation Center," he said, "I knew we needed someone special to lead it, someone with not just intelligence and organizational skills, but heart. Someone who truly understands what children need to flourish. In Marissa Cole, we found that person." As Marissa took the stage, the spotlight momentarily blinding her, she felt a surge of gratitude for how far she had come from those quiet nights at the Evermont desk. She spoke from the heart about the center's mission, about creating opportunities for children from all backgrounds to explore science and technology. She told them about Lucas and his solar panel project, about how many other children had brilliant ideas but lacked resources to develop them. The audience responded with enthusiastic applause. As she left the stage, Ezra was waiting with a proud smile. "That was perfect," he said. "You've won them over completely." The rest of the evening was a whirlwind. Donors approached her with offers of support, educators asked about collaboration opportunities, and technology companies suggested partnerships. By the time the dancing began, Marissa was exhausted but exhilarated. She was speaking with a university professor about STEM programs, when she felt a light touch on her elbow. Ezra stood beside her, looking somewhat apologetic for the interruption. "Would you do me the honor of a dance?" he asked. Marissa hesitated. Dancing seemed more personal than their carefully maintained professional relationship allowed. But tonight felt different, a celebration of what they had built together, if not as friends or something more than as colleagues with a shared vision. "I'd like that," she said, excusing herself from the conversation. Ezra led her to the dance floor where other couples were swaying to the string quartet's music. His hand rested lightly at her waist, the other holding hers with gentle firmness. They moved together easily, as if they had danced 100 times before. "You've made quite an impression tonight," Ezra said. "3 major donors have already committed to funding specific programs at the center." "That's wonderful," Marissa said, genuinely pleased. "It's all happening so fast, sometimes I can hardly believe it." "Believe it," Ezra said. "You've earned this, Marissa. The center will be extraordinary because of your vision." She looked up at him, touched by his faith in her. "Thank you for the opportunity, for believing in me when I didn't fully believe in myself." His eyes softened. "There's something special about you, Marissa Cole. I recognized it that first night at the Evermont." The music slowed, and other couples moved closer. Ezra's hand pressed slightly more firmly against her back, not pulling her closer but offering the possibility. "How is Lucas?" he asked. "He's good," Marissa said, smiling at the thought of her son. "Loving his new school. He asks about you sometimes." "Does he?" Ezra looked pleased. "I miss him, his enthusiasm, his curiosity." "He misses you too," Marissa admitted. A comfortable silence fell between them as they continued dancing. Marissa was acutely aware of his nearness, of the subtle scent of his cologne, of how natural it felt to be in his arms. "Marissa," Ezra said, finally, his voice low, "these past 3 months respecting your wishes for space, it's been harder than I expected." Her heart quickened. "For me too," she confessed. "Really?" Hope flashed in his eyes. "Yes." Now that she had started, the words came more easily. "I miss our conversations, the way you listen when I talk about Lucas, your book recommendations." Ezra's smile was gentle. "I have a stack of books I've been wanting to share with you." The tea song ended, and they stepped apart, though Ezra kept hold of her hand. "Would you like to get some air? It's a bit overwhelming in here." Marissa nodded, and he led her through French doors onto a terrace overlooking the hotel gardens. The October night was cool but not cold, the sky clear and filled with stars. "Better?" Ezra asked. "Much." Marissa moved to the stone balustrade, looking out at the twinkling city lights beyond the garden. "It's beautiful here." Ezra stood beside her, close but not touching. "Marissa, I've been thinking a lot about what you said that night at the lake house, about needing time and space." She turned to face him. "So have I." "And?" His voice was careful, controlled, as if bracing himself for disappointment. "And I think maybe we've had enough time apart," she said softly. "I miss you, Ezra. Not just professionally, I miss my friend." Relief and joy transformed his face. "I've missed you too, more than I can say." He reached for her hand, his thumb tracing gentle circles on her palm. "These months have given me time to think as well. About Catherine and Emma, about loss and healing." Marissa listened, hearing the new steadiness in his voice when he spoke of his family. "I'll always love them," Ezra continued. "They'll always be part of who I am. But I've realized something important." He looked directly into her eyes. "The heart doesn't have limited capacity for love, it expands." "Yes," Marissa whispered, understanding completely. "When I think about the future now," Ezra said, "I can see possibilities I couldn't before. And in every version of that future that brings me joy, you and Lucas are there." Marissa felt tears spring to her eyes at the simple, heartfelt declaration. "We want to be there," she said, "if you're sure." "I've never been more sure of anything," Ezra said. His hand came up to gently cup her cheek. "May I kiss you, Marissa? I've been wanting to since the moment you walked in tonight." In answer, she leaned forward, closing the distance between them. His lips met hers in a kiss that was soft and sweet, a promise rather than a demand. Marissa felt something unlock inside her, the last of her fears and doubts giving way to hope. When they finally pulled apart, Ezra's eyes were bright with emotion. "I think I'm falling in love with you, Marissa Cole." The words, so simply stated, filled her with warmth. "I think I'm falling in love with you too, Ezra Callahan," he smiled, drawing her into his arms. "So what happens now?" "Now," Marissa said, resting her head against his chest, "we take things one day at a time. We find our way forward together." "I like the sound of that," Ezra murmured against her hair. They stayed on the terrace for a long time, talking about everything and nothing, Lucas's latest invention ideas, books they had read, dreams for the Innovation Center. It was like their midnight conversations at the Evermont, but with a new openness, a shared understanding of what they meant to each other. Eventually, they returned to the gala, hand in hand. Marissa noticed a few curious glances, a few whispers, but found she no longer cared what others thought. She and Ezra had earned this happiness, this second chance at love. 1 month later, on a sunny Sunday afternoon, Ezra's lakeside home was filled with laughter and conversation. The Innovation Center's groundbreaking ceremony had been held the day before, and Ezra had invited the team and their families to celebrate. Marissa stood in the kitchen, arranging cookies on a platter, when Sarah Jenkins appeared at her side. "Need any help?" Sarah asked, reaching for a serving dish. "Thanks," Marissa said with a smile. "I'm still getting used to entertaining in this place." Though she and Lucas maintained their own apartment, they had been spending more and more time at Ezra's home. The lake house that had once seemed like a shrine to his past life was gradually being transformed, not erasing memories of Catherine and Emma, but making room for new ones. "You seem happy," Sarah observed, her tone warm with approval. "I am," Marissa admitted. "Happier than I thought possible." Through the kitchen window, she could see Ezra and Lucas by the lake, launching a model boat they had built together. The easy affection between them, the way Ezra listened so intently to Lucas's excited explanations, made her heart swell. "He's changed," Sarah said, following her gaze. "There's life in his eyes again." "We've both changed," Marissa said softly. "He taught me to trust again, to believe in possibilities I'd given up on." Sarah squeezed her arm affectionately. "Catherine would have approved, you know. She always said Ezra needed someone who saw the man, not the money or the position." The validation meant more to Marissa than she expected. "Thank you for saying that." Outside, Lucas's boat successfully completed its maiden voyage, and he jumped up and down with excitement. Ezra caught him in a celebratory hug, lifting him off his feet as they both laughed. Marissa carried the cookie platter out to the deck, where team members and their families were enjoying the afternoon. As she set it down, Ezra and Lucas joined, her both slightly breathless from their lakeside activities. "Mum, our boat worked perfectly," Lucas exclaimed. "Ezra said next time we can add a solar panel so it can recharge itself." "That sounds amazing," Marissa said, ruffling his hair. "Why don't you grab some cookies before they disappear?" As Lucas darted away to the refreshment table, Ezra slipped his arm around Marissa's waist. "He's brilliant," he said with pride that matched her own. "The things he comes up with astound me." "He adores you," Marissa said. "Sometimes I think he likes you more than me." Ezra laughed. "Impossible. But I'll take a close second." They stood together, watching the gathering. Colleagues becoming friends, children playing together on the lawn. The Innovation Center team discussing future plans with excitement. It was a moment of perfect contentment, a life neither of them could have imagined when Ezra first walked into the Evermont Hotel on that rainy night. "I have something for you," Ezra said suddenly, reaching into his pocket. He pulled out a small worn book, a first edition of Pride and Prejudice. "Ezra?" Marissa breathed, carefully taking the treasure. "This is too much." "Open it," he urged gently. She did, finding an inscription on the first page in elegant, faded handwriting. "To my beloved Catherine, may we write our own love story with as much wit and heart as Austen. Forever yours, Ezra." Marissa looked up at him, confused. This was Catherine's. Ezra nodded, his expression serene rather than pained. It was her favorite book. She read it every year on our anniversary. Then you should keep it, Marissa said, trying to hand it back. It's too precious. Ezra closed her fingers around the book. Catherine believed that books were meant to be read, loved, passed on. She would want you to have it. His eyes held hers, full of meaning. It's important to me that you understand. Catherine will always be part of my life, part of my heart, just as James will always be part of yours. Marissa felt tears well in her eyes at the mention of her late husband. Yes, he will. But that doesn't diminish what we're building together, Ezra continued. In fact, I think it deepens it. We both know how precious love is, how quickly it can be taken away, and how miraculous it is when it returns, Marissa added softly. Ezra smiled, drawing her closer. Exactly. Later, as the sun began to set and guests departed, Marissa found herself alone with Ezra on the deck. Lucas was inside, engrossed in a video game with one of the team members' children who had stayed behind. Today was perfect, she said, leaning against Ezra's side as they watched the golden light play across the lake. It was, he agreed, though I keep thinking about something Lucas said to me earlier. Oh? Marissa looked up at him curiously. What was that? Ezra's expression was a mixture of amusement and nervousness. He asked me if I was going to be his dad someday. Marissa's breath caught. He did. What did you say? I told him that would be up to his mum, Ezra said carefully, and that whether or not that happened, I would always care about him and be there for him. That was a good answer, Marissa said, her heart racing. Ezra turned to face her fully. But I didn't tell him what I hope the answer will be. And what's that? Marissa asked, though she thought she knew. Instead of speaking, Ezra reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Marissa's eyes widened as he opened it to reveal a ring, elegant and understated, a single diamond in a simple setting. It's not Catherine's, he said quickly. I wanted this to be just for you. New beginnings. Tears filled Marissa's eyes as Ezra took her hand. Marissa Cole, you brought light back into my life when I thought the darkness would last forever. You and Lucas have shown me that family can be found in unexpected places, that love can heal even the deepest wounds. His voice grew husky with emotion. I know this hasn't been a conventional romance. We've had our share of complications and misunderstandings, but I know with absolute certainty that I want to spend the rest of my life with you. Will you marry me? Marissa looked into his eyes and saw their future reflected there. Not perfect, perhaps, but real and true and filled with possibility. Yes, she said, her voice clear and certain. Yes, I'll marry you. Ezra slipped the ring onto her finger, then drew her into a kiss that felt like coming home. When they finally parted, both a little breathless, Marissa laughed softly. Lucas is going to be unbearably smug about this, she said. He's been dropping hints for weeks. Smart kid, Ezra said with a grin. Takes after his mother. From inside the house came Lucas's voice, calling for them. Mom, Ezra, come see what Jake and I built. Hand in hand, they turned toward the house, toward Lucas, toward their future together. The past would always be part of them, Catherine and Emma, James, but it no longer defined them. What defined them now was the family they were building, the love they had found when neither was looking for it. As they stepped inside, Marissa glanced back at the lake one last time. The last rays of sunlight glittered on the water like promises waiting to be kept, and for the first time in a very long time, she knew without doubt that the best was yet to come. In the months that followed, the Callahan Innovation Center took shape, rising from empty land into a building filled with possibility. Marissa and Ezra were married in a simple ceremony by the lake, with Lucas serving proudly as best man, and the Evermont Hotel where their story began became the site of the Innovation Center's first fundraising gala. As Marissa stood in the familiar lobby, now transformed with flowers and lights, she thought about how much had changed since that rainy night when a grieving man had checked in with no luggage and no hope. Life's greatest gifts, she had learned, often came disguised as ordinary moments, a cup of tea offered in kindness, a shared conversation in the quiet hours of night, a hand reaching out when it was most needed. And sometimes, if you were brave enough to open your heart, even after it had been broken, you might find that the night shift, those dark hours that seemed endless, was simply the beginning of a new day, a new life, a new love, the end.